And welcome in to a live special edition of Buckin' Crazy, brought to you by YinzerCrazy.com. It's a big day for the Pittsburgh Pirates, of course, and not just because. Hold on one second, guys. Okay, we should be set. To apologize if we had any technical difficulties there. We're back here live, as I mentioned, on Buckin' Crazy on an important night. Of course, it is Bucco's draft night. We've been counting down the days ever since they finished with the worst record in all of baseball last season and earned the number one pick. And now we're turning around here quickly live for the first time on Buckin' Crazy, our all-new Pirates web series, to bring you the best coverage on the web on what's about to go down. And we're all very excited to find out. I'm excited to be joined by two of my Yinzer Crazy contributors here. They have been on the ball with Pirates coverage all season. They're David Stegan and Elliot Hicks. Gentlemen, first and foremost, I'll throw it to you, David, to get us going. What are you looking forward to most tonight? And it could be anything from the Pirates' faithful reaction on Facebook and Twitter to Neil Walker making the pick.
I'm kind of a mess of nerves. I think you were a little understated, Mike. This is not an important night. This is the biggest night of the Pirates in years. Let's be honest. They have to nail this. It is the difference between drafting a Brian Bullington and essentially an Andrew McCutchen. They got to get the right guy here. If we're going to win again, we can't screw this up. So while we're not going to even know if the guy we pick is good, this decision is huge. So I'm just kind of like I'm a mess right now, to be honest. I feel like it'd be so much easier if there was a Bryce Harper or a Steven Strasburg and you just throw up your feet and say, this is the dude. But everybody out there, the Pirates could go one of, 5, 6, 7, 8 ways. God knows what they'll do, or they could do something completely off the board and surprise us. So there's a lot to, be watching for tonight.
So there was a moment, Elliot, maybe around this time last season, where we said there is a Bryce Harper or a Steven Strasburg on the board. And that was in the form of Kumar Rocker, of course. You saw the hashtag tank for Kumar. He was a locked-in number one overall choice. And then a lot changed. We saw this process is very fluid. So before we get into Kumar a little more, Elliot, who are you hearing about the Pirates' top prospects on the board and where they might go with this pick?
Right. So, David, I do agree with you. The Pirates have to nail this. But the more I've learned about these prospects at the top of the board, the less stressed I've got almost. It seems like these guys all have a lot of positives, that any of these 5, 6, 7, however many guys at the top of the board are going to be pretty good major league players, we think. So, actually, I just saw a tweet from Kevin Goldstein, a national writer for Fangraphs. Of course, Marcelo Meyer, the shortstop, he's been kind of floated as the favorite to be the top pick tonight. He tweeted out, my confidence level in Pittsburgh, taking Marcelo Meyer with the number one pick in the past hour or so, has gone from almost certainly just to, yeah, probably. And that the other two names they're considering, Henry Davis out of Louisville and Khalil Watson, another high school middle infielder. So definitely going to be really interesting. I kind of like the uncertainty almost. I know it would be a lot easier to have a Bryce Harper and do better for the system. But it's going to be fun not really knowing who the guy is and having the surprise with the rest of us here. In terms of Kumar Rocker, of course, I think he's a great pitcher. Either he or Jack Leiter. I would have preferred them to go number one overall to the Pirates, but it's not going to happen at this point. I've accepted it. I've been resigned to the fact that those two are going to become Hall of Fame pitchers in other cities, as I alluded to on our last episode. Something crazy if you saw that. But either way, I'm excited. I think with Rocker, he's gone from being that dynamite number one guy to a little lower on the board. One thing I read, somebody said this, that he's not a finished product, so to speak, and that's why he won't go number one, or maybe even he may even slide out of the top 5, depending on everybody's strategies. That kind of doesn't make sense to me because, I mean, you're not really going to have a finished product into the MLB draft. I mean, very, very rarely is that ever going to happen, especially because they're going to go through the minor leagues anyway. So I think that that's a little silly, but also I'm certainly no expert on the draft. This year is by far the most that I've paid attention to college baseball in my entire life. So, but I'll quit rambling here. The point is, I'm excited for this. It's a good day to be a Pirates fan. We haven't had a lot of those lately.
I guess my hesitation just comes as all these guys look great. You read, okay, Marcelo Meyer, he's the next Corey Seager. Jordan Lawler, he's the next Derek Jeter. You get all this hype, but history shows us some of these guys are going to miss. The baseball draft is just hard. We're drafting 18, 19-year-old kids who, even if they're excellent, aren't going to sniff the major leagues for 4 or 5 years. And even if you look at the history of the last couple of years of the Jack Leiters and Kumar Rockers, guys who were excellent in college, and the Pirates have drafted a few. I remember, Mike, I did a few weeks ago, looking back at the history of the top 10 Pirates draft picks. You look at a guy like Brad Lincoln, who was an absolute monster in college. Dude never put it together. Just injuries, just ineffectiveness. It's so hard to predict these guys. And I think baseball, they've gotten better about it. A few months ago, I read the MVP Machine from Ben Lindbergh and Travis Sawchek that looked at the development of, how teams are better developing these guys. So I think it's a little better than it used to, but we're going to look back at this draft one day, and sadly, one or two or three, who knows, these guys might miss or might, you might have this, they might make the major leagues. They might be a nice player, but are they going to be, you have the number one pick. You want that guy who's going to be in 10 All-Star games, who's going to be getting MVP votes every year. You're looking for an anchor for your franchise. So my nerves are, through the roof. And Elliot, talking about Kumar Rocker, he's a fascinating prospect. I remember his dad, Tracy Rocker, playing for the Redskins in the NFL. And he has that he's a big dude. He's like 6'5", 250. He's everything you want in a starting pitcher. And he just had a little bit of a hit or miss season. And it's other guys came before him. At number one, maybe I'm not interested in him. But if I was sitting at 5, 6, 7 and Kumar Rocker's there for me, I'd be thrilled.
Was that Redskins football in the 60s? Tracy Rocker?
It was the 90s. I know. Don't let the gray beard fool you. This was the 90s. Dad was a big defensive lineman, edge rusher, and you see it a little bit when Kumar pitches. He's a gamer. He goes out there and he throws hard, and he has a lot to like. And the same with Jack Leiter. Obviously with Leiter, the one thing that I want to say worries me about passing him, we've seen in baseball, you see so much greatness from these second generation players, including our own Ke'Bryan Hayes, but you look at Fernando Tatis, you look at Vladimir Guerrero. I think the bloodlines do matter a little bit. And, there's a good chance Jack Leiter ends up being the best player in this draft. I prefer the bat still, but I definitely understand where Elliot's coming from.
Well, Elliot went ahead and gave us a glimpse, put on his GM hat, and he said if he's Ben Cherington with his number one overall pick, he would take Jack Leiter, the starting pitcher out of Vanderbilt. I've been back and forth. I had Leiter as my guy for a long time with that pick, simply because I think he is a can't-miss guy. I'd be shocked if he wasn't a good major league player when it's all said and done. He has elite stuff. The pedigree, of course, as you mentioned, and his dad, as you just mentioned, is Al Leiter. I just don't see this guy failing, even if it's not him being the next Max Scherzer, right, or him being Justin Verlander. I think it's a good chance, no matter what, his floor is a good number 3 starter in Major League Baseball. And with the MLB draft being such a non-sure thing, as you alluded to, David, I think Jack Leiter is about as sure as a thing as they do come. With that said, you threw out some names, David. We're a little past 7:02 here. You're Ben Cherington. Who do you take number one? Is it Marcelo Meyer?
Geez, after everything I've read, I would say yes. It's hard. This is, like we've said, this is a hard one to pick the best guy. It seems like Meyer has the best combination of high ceiling, a decent floor. They say his defense is going to play no matter what. They talk about a big power potential. I think he is playing. His coach, I read an article in high school, compared him to Adrian Gonzalez, the big former slugger for the Red Sox and the Padres. And I think he played at the same high school that Marcelo is playing at now. And, Adrian was a 40 home run guy. And if you translate that, if you give me a shortstop who's hitting 40 home runs, 35 home runs from the left side, you got to try that. You have to go for the ceiling here. You mentioned Jack Leiter is a guy. Yeah, he's probably has the best chance of being a successful big league pitcher. is he going to be that number one ace who's going to be competing for Cy Youngs, or is he someone, you look at him, he has a good fastball, he has a good breaking ball. He's not huge when it comes to baseball pitcher standards. It's weird to say a guy who's 6'2" is a little undersized, but he looks like Kumar Rocker's little brother. And is he going to be someone who's going to give you 200, 220 innings consistently? He does have probably the highest floor of all the guys in the draft, but you got the number one pick. We got to swing. We got to try to get Griffey Jr. We got to get the next Chipper Jones. I don't want a number 2 starter. I want, go for it all. You're not in this situation many times.
For anybody tuning into Buckin' Crazy over here, brought to you by Yinzer Crazy Show, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Yinzer Crazy, for more content such as this. We've had the Fort McHenry on Buckin' Crazy. We had Kip Wells just last week, bringing you all kind of former Pirates out of their caves here on this show. And if you're watching us instead of the MLB draft right now, first of all, thank you. You might be just as crazy as us. And I want to let you know that the Pirates have not yet made their selection, but things look like they are about to kick off here shortly. Elliot, I want to go to you. I think so often is made about positional tiers in the minor leagues in terms of these franchises, right? You'll have a lot of people on one side saying, why do you need a guy like Marcelo Meyer or Jordan Lawler when you have a guy you trusted shortstop in Liever Peguero who's coming up quickly through the system and rising, and it looks like a guy that might be your shortstop of the future. Others will say it doesn't matter. You can't project what's going to happen 3 years from now. He could get traded, he could get hurt, or he can end up like the Brad Lincolns and Cole Tuckers of the world who don't end up turning out to be much of anything when it's all said and done anyways. What's your overall take kind of on that strategy? For you, if you're a GM, are you just taking who you identify as the number one prospect on the board with that pick? Or are you trying to kind of fill in those spots as you project later on the major league team?
Hey, guys, Jim Callis just said the Pirates are taking Henry Davis.
No crap. Really?
All right.
Yeah, Jim Callis just tweeted the Pirates are going with Henry Davis at 1-1. Jason Mackey and the rest of the crew are trying to confirm it, but that's what Jim Callis is saying.
Well, thanks for jumping in. This will happen on a live show, and Elliot, we'll get back to that because one thing the Pirates don't have is a catcher. And you know what? I made a little bit of a case for Henry Davis about a half an hour ago before we jumped on this show on my Twitter account at Mic'd Up Sports 1. When I tweeted that he is really the only premium position player that stands out above the field to me. Catcher, some have said, is becoming less valuable in baseball because of these robot umps.
Jeff Passan is confirming it as well.
So Rob Manfred is now at the podium, guys, and he is introducing the Pirates with the first pick. But we have some insider information, it appears, potentially. All right, Elliot, I'll just throw it to you immediately. What's your initial reaction, if true?
Well, yeah, it kind of goes hand in hand with the question that you asked before we got that info.
Yeah.
I think that at the number one pick, you do have to swing for the best value. And that's why I've got off of my Vandy horse that I was on as I've done more research, because we were just talking all that stuff about Leiter. I get it. He's got the highest floor, but if he only turns out to be a number 3 starter, like, it sucks because we could have got enough. We can almost pull number 3 starters out of our ass, the way the Pirates have been going lately. So in any case, I think Henry Davis is a very good player if he does end up being the number 1 pick. I mean, Jeff Passan is someone that I trust basically more than anybody else in the baseball circle. So I'm just going to say it. He's got to be the number 1 pick at this point, even before we hear it from the Pittsburgh kid, Neil Walker himself on the stage. But I said I watched more college baseball than usual this year. I also watched more ACC baseball than usual this year with my role with the University of Pittsburgh that I've been going with. And the ACC was super duper competitive this year. Probably 8 or 9 teams were very, very good. They had a lot of teams make the tournament, and even NC State made a big run there, almost knocked off. I forget if they won or not. They went pretty deep into the College World Series. I definitely should know that. But in any case, Henry Davis, very good player, very good catcher, very good bat. If he can stick at the catching position, this is definitely a very good selection. My mind almost goes to Buster Posey. He's had a very long, successful career at catcher, great bat out of college. I think he was even out of the ACC as well, if I remember correctly. So
Buster Posey played at Florida State. Jason Mackey is now confirming it as well.
It's written in stone. It is done.
As soon as I heard Jeff Passan, I was like, all right, this is it. So
Jeff Passan is the Schefter of baseball. So he's on it. David, immediate reaction. I know you've been backing Henry Davis for a while.
I do like Henry Davis. I think after Meyer, he was my second guy who I felt comfortable with. He is a big power bat, right-handed hitter. Keith Law was really the first one who jumped on the Davis bandwagon a few months ago. And after Law went to see him and basically said, why isn't this guy number one? He is going to have a big time power bat. They think he can stick at catcher. He has a fantastic throwing arm. They see him as a 35 home run guy. It's an excellent choice. There's nothing, I think any way they went this year, Davis is an absolutely fine selection.
For this pick to work, does he have to stay at catcher?
Absolutely. He has to stay a catcher. You cannot move him to first base. Third base is a little bit occupied for the next decade, so he's not going there.
I read from Tim Williams, Pittsburgh Baseball Network used to be Pirates Prospects, another big Pirates guy, that even if Davis has a good bat, he can't move to third base because Hayes is there. You just have a guy at first base. I mean, he's definitely not as valuable. And not only is this probably the best value pick for the Pirates, but it also does fill that need in their system because, Elias Diaz is long gone. He was the top prospect there for a while. Jacob Stallings is going to be a good enough stopgap for the next few years, which was enough of a surprise.
For the next 2 weeks, he's going to be gone. He's going to be great for the next 2 weeks.
As long as Jacob Stallings sticks with us, if we don't move him, I think he'll stick around. And the only guy who is, half decent at catcher was Indy Rodriguez, who we picked up from the Mets in that 3-team Joe Musgrove trade. And he was a guy who I don't even think really was solely a catcher until this season. I think he was moving around to other positions. So
yeah, and he's not solidified to be be there long term either. He has some question marks as to whether he'll end up eventually at a left field type deal. Believe it or not, I tweeted out a little earlier as I was alluding to that. I think Davis intrigued me the most. I think with these mid-market teams from 2010 to 2020, we've seen some similarities with the Giants. You mentioned Buster Posey. Obviously, they're a little higher salary than the Pirates, but they're not the Yankees or Red Sox. But Buster Posey, Giants world champions multiple times. Salvador Perez, Royals, small market team, excellent backstop, World Series champion, of course. And then the Cardinals, who, another larger market in baseball terms, but not necessarily the Yankees, Red Sox, Astros, Cubs, etc. Yadier Molina, of course. So, is that enough right there to show you that elite backstops do make a difference still in 2023 and 24 and beyond, David?
Well, yeah, I think Davis's position makes a huge deal. You mentioned, just before all this kind of broke about the positionality of Davis and saying, catcher is definitely a need. The Pirates, they're not drafting Davis here as a catcher to fill a need, I believe, but their lack of depth at that position in the minors just shows how hard it is to find a guy who can play catcher in the big leagues and, can be good at it. And Stallings is a guy, he's a late bloomer. He's already 31 years old, which, is, catchers tend to age in dog years when it comes to baseball. So Davis is a guy, he's going to come in. He's going to be quick through the minors. He is a elite college bat. He's going to start next year probably in Greensboro. He is going to probably move quickly. He's a guy we could see in Pittsburgh in 2023, late in the year, maybe 2024. The good thing about him also, the Pirates do need pop. You need, this is a minor league system. While there's a lot of excellent players, power always translates. If the National League does bring in the DH, he's a guy you can keep his bat in the lineup on days when he's not catching. You could have him DH and he doesn't have to get beat up behind the plate. It's an excellent pick. There's him or Meyer, I think, were the two ways to go. I would have felt nervous with a starting pitcher just because of all the injury issues. The only downside, I guess, is Meyer and Nick Gonzalez might have made the most handsome double play combo in the history of Major League Baseball. These are two stunning gentlemen. I think all the ladies of the 412 would have loved to have these two guys turn double plays, but that's, I guess, an argument for another day.
Elliot, it fits the timeline, right? I know Ben Cherington said he wasn't picking for that specific reason, right? He was going to take the best player available. But when you look at this current crop of guys entering I should say, moving up and ascending this Pirates farm system, Henry Davis is a guy who fits that 2023, 2024 profile when they should all be reaching the major leagues at a similar time frame. Do you agree?
For sure. I think part of the reason they decided with Davis as the number one pick is it was the best of both worlds. You get top value. Nobody is going to argue that he was deserving to be selected number one overall. But also, catching is kind of barren in the system, as we were talking about. He is going to be a guy that fits the timeline. And I would almost try to be more aggressive with him coming through the minor leagues. Not that you have to rush him, but if he's doing well enough, you could almost have him the opening day catcher when you get into 23. I say start him at Bradenton right now. They're the low A team now with the minor league reorganization. That's already with where the major league, spring training stuff is. Start him there, and if he does well, have him in Greensboro right away. You can almost get him to Altoona by next summer. I mean, they don't have to be that aggressive, but getting a guy out of college, you do have that option. If it was somebody like Marcelo Meyer or one of these high school shortstops or whatever, then I definitely get, kind of keeping him low for a while. But I think Davis fits the timeline better because as we've seen from these performances, from some of our guys coming up and some of our kind of random guys throughout the system, John Nagowski is a cult hero now after about a week. Rodolfo Castro hit 2 home runs today. He's a prospect that kind of not necessarily came out of nowhere, but he wasn't one of the top guys. So I think that the timeline could almost be bumped up and that Davis would fit that better than a high school shortstop like Meyer or Lawler or Watson would have. And
Rob Manfred is getting ready to make the pick official for what it is worth, gentlemen. The pick is in. And the Pittsburgh Pirates, the anchor to their future, the wind in our sails is now on the backs of catcher Henry Davis from Louisville, who is now walking up to the podium with a big smile, very happy, hugging family members. And guys, this is hopefully a moment that we're going to look back on in retrospect in a few years and say, when this Pirates team hopefully is contending again, Henry Davis is going to be the one behind the dish, leading this team to hopefully what is another World Series title.
Yeah, we can only hope. I always love the hitters. I love the power. The other interesting part here too is, and this will come out in the next couple days, what was the slot number that he agreed to? Right. I mean, not signability. He's going to sign. The question is at what number and what will that allow Ben Sherrington to do later? We're going to see. The second round isn't tonight, right? That gets punted till tomorrow.
I think it's first round tonight, 2 through 10 tomorrow, and then the rest the day after, I feel like.
Yeah, that sounds right. So, the Pirates are going to have the first pick in the second round. We're going to have to see what first round talent slide down to the Pirates. Part of what I was thinking they might do is take Meyer first and then look at that second crop of catchers, see maybe if somebody dropped down that they might want to take there. Maybe they go pitching later, with the second round, tried to find some high school guys above slot, see else who slides. My one dream is that David Bednar's little brother slides down, but after his College World Series performance, I don't think that's going to happen. He was my dream. The kid seems like an absolute killer, but the number is going to be interesting part for Davis. And if Meyer was looking for more, I actually saw a report earlier that Meyer, his agent might have been trying to push him to Detroit and might not have been playing. And this is just a tweet I saw. So, take that for what it's worth. It's
everything
good.
On Twitter is gospel.
Everything I know.
Everything is gospel.
It was an egg that had 7 followers. So, I don't know. I don't know exactly where I saw it from, but
everyone's got to trust the eggs, they're the most.
Yeah. So who knows if, something like that happened, if Meyer's folks thought they wanted to push him down to Detroit, if he was in the mix, if they wanted to try to push him towards Boston, it makes you wonder what the floor for Davis was. Were any of the 3 immediate teams after us looking at him? I knew Baltimore wasn't going to take him just for the fact, we don't talk about, the positionality, but they have Adley Rushman in their minor league system, number 1 catcher who by all intents and purposes is going to be the next, a great star in baseball. So they really, you don't draft for anything, but you really had no need to draft someone like Henry Davis. And that's a rare circumstance. So you wonder what Davis's market was and what number Ben Sherrington was able to get him to agree to make, give him more flexibility tomorrow and during the rest of the draft.
David, I hear your point about strategy. I heard a couple of individuals discussing the strategy potentially of taking a Marcelo Meyer or Jordan Lawler number 1 overall, and then turn back around and take Del Castillo, who we had talked about earlier in the season, the Miami catcher, who didn't have a great year, but around this time last year was being talked about as a top 5 pick at the catcher position. So obviously that strategy will not be in play here for the Pirates. Elliot, as you look toward the competitive balance round, I think they have, I don't know, pick 37 or 38. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but what to you sticks out? What's the next position you'd like to see, even if not a specific player? Is it pitching because you were so high on Leiter in the first place?
Yeah, I think it's got to be a pitcher for sure. You got to balance it out there. You're going to get it. One of the best pitchers you can get. Hopefully, get a guy who, again, you had to have created a little bit of flexibility picking Davis there, but I'm glad that they did go with the college guy after all and didn't try to, bargain bin the first overall pick to try to get guys later in the draft. I mean, if a guy like Will Bednar fell, it would be an absolute dream. I don't think so. I can't say I'm super familiar with, a giant list of pitching prospects in this draft, but I do think pitching is going to be the way to go there. I wouldn't be mad if they took, anybody else, any position. Obviously, these guys certainly know better than I do, but I think pitching has got to be what they're looking at first. Then.
The two I would look for. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
No, I'm just going to say Henry Davis is now being interviewed by Jeff Passon, who broke the news just a few minutes prior to the episode of Buck and Crazy, us going live, brought to you by YinzerCrazy.com. Henry Davis, the catcher out of Louisville, is the Pirates' #1 overall pick if you're just now joining us. David, go ahead.
I was just going to say 2 pitchers to look for who might drop is Gunnar Hoglund, a starting pitcher out, I want to say Mississippi State, out of the SEC. He's a guy the Pirates actually drafted a few years ago under.
I don't recognize that name.
Yeah, under Neil Huntington, but he didn't stick. Hoglund had Tommy John surgery this spring. He was projected originally as the top 10 pick, and now there's talk that he's going to drop in the draft. So if you're not too worried about the injury history, there is talk he could end up somewhere, maybe the Yankees or the Dodgers in the mid-20s. Another guy in a similar situation is Jaden Hill, a starting pitcher out of LSU, also having Tommy John surgery, who was the guy, another one potential top 10 pick, and then the injury might scare people away. If one of them drops down to the Pirates, it'd be hard not to want to take them. They may take a little bit of an oversign because they might be guys who threaten to go back to school, saying, hey, I could have been a top 10 pick without this injury. Might take a little bit more to sign. So those are 2 guys just to watch as the draft goes on, at least for me.
Are you guys with me?
Number 2 to Texas just came in.
Really? Officially? Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
So went to
I
Texas?
heard he was pushing for Boston. His reps were pushing for the Red Sox. So very interesting now. The Rangers taking Jack Leiter, the guy that we thought for a long time was going to be the Pittsburgh Pirates selection. I would say, heck, February through April. It felt like it had swung fully in Leiter's direction. And now he is going to Arlington for a team that's obviously rebuilding as well.
Number 3 starter. I'm fine on him. You got a mid-rotation starter. Good job, Texas.
I wanted to ask you guys, because you mentioned the word Tommy John, David, and that a lot of scouts and GMs, whoever it may be, might be looking at this as something that pushes these players down the board. Is it just me, or do you see it as a positive now? You get it out of the way earlier. You have to project a Leiter or a Rocker at some point probably to go under the knife, don't you?
I think so. I mean, they pitched quite a bit for Vanderbilt this season. They really, went all out. I saw Rocker had a lot of really high pitch counts in some games and things like that. So, I mean, I do like not going with a pitcher at number 1 now when you mentioned that, because we saw that with Tyon. I believe Tyon had 2 Tommy John surgeries, one even before he made the majors back in, I believe, the middle of 2015, I think. 14 or 15, he had his first Tommy John. Right. And, we've seen what's happened with him. He's not with the Pirates anymore, and he's never been, a bona fide ace pitcher in the major leagues, which you kind of wanted him to be, being in between Bryce Harper and Manny Machado. So I do think that's Leiter. He's got very high upside. He definitely could become an ace and become a pretty good legend, pretty good major league player like Al Leiter was, or, number 3 starter. And either way, I've like I said, I hopped off the Vandy train. I'm excited for the Davis pick, and good for Texas that they're going to take the risk on a guy like Leiter.
I'm surprised that Texas didn't go with Jordan Lawler. The kid is from the Dallas area. He's 20, 30 minutes away. He's obviously was in the discussion for a long time for number 1. Leiter could end up being an excellent pick. I feel like with pitchers, I feel like it's such a numbers game. Like we said, guys get hurt. You don't want them to have Tommy John. You almost say, okay, at least it's over with. But there's a feeling these guys are going to get it. The success rate now is pretty good. But then you get a guy like Tyon who might have it a second time. They might have other issues. They might not come back from it fully. I love what Sherrington did last year, where he took my boyfriend Nick Gonzalez, and then he just took all pitchers and just threw numbers. And you look at all the guys we drafted last year, big guys who throw hard, and you hope enough of them, reach the majors, enough of them don't suffer injuries. And you also look at a guy like JT Brubaker. You don't have to have elite stuff to be successful. I think you can develop pitchers. I think you can coach them. I think you can do a lot of different things to get value out of pitchers. You get me a dude who can hit just on his own, that I think is a lot harder to come by.
We might have just ruined our shot at potentially ever having Nick Gonzalez on an episode of Bucking Crazy. But nevertheless,
I don't think I'm allowed to be on that one. I think that's just for Nick, for your safety, we're not going to have David on. It's fine. We don't want him to know your IP address.
Hey, let's put our Mel Kiper hats on really quickly. I guess in baseball's sense, it would be Jonathan Mayo, who does a lot of the mock drafts. 3, 4, and 5 here to go. Obviously, the Pirates, we already hit on them. We'll get back to this. We'll circle back to it. They took Henry Davis, the catcher from Louisville. Number 2, the Rangers took Jack Leiter, the starting pitcher from Vanderbilt. Detroit, Boston, Baltimore, the next 3. Elliot, are we about to see some of these shortstops come off the board?
I think so. I think these guys are too talented. And I almost wonder, we brought up Lawler there, surprised that Texas didn't take him. I don't know if maybe he's got a number, he's got a team where he wants to go to, or he's experiencing a little bit of a slide. I know we're only 2 picks in, but the tweets that I saw from that Fangraphs guy that I mentioned at the very beginning didn't have Lawler in contention for that number 1 pick. It was Meyer, Davis, or Watson, not Lawler. So he may have negotiated with one team or another saying, hey, this is where I want to go. They're going to give me the money. They're giving me what I want. So it will be interesting, but I do think we're going to see those shortstops come off, and I think Kumar is going to go in one of these next 3 or 4 picks. I think, even though he wasn't.
Does Boston consider him at 4? I know they were in the lighter running and the sweepstakes, I should say. And I saw a lot of mocks with Kumar being pushed down. I think it was the Royals to 9. Boston, if you're a team that feels like you're close, obviously you can spend whatever the heck you want. Do you take a guy like Kumar knowing he could be there in a year and a half, 2 years, David?
Kumar makes sense for Boston, and if nothing else, you just get people yelling Kumar Rocker with the Boston accent for the next decade, just to annoy the hell out of everybody. He's definitely a good pick. We could see Meyer. We did mention the Detroit thing. If there's any validity to that, they'd also been connected to Jackson Jobe, a high school pitcher, who I wasn't crazy about, but he's somebody who could he could go to Detroit now, or he could slip to the middle of the first round. I think Khalil Watson, probably, if Jordan Lawler, he could slip to Baltimore. There was talk of him being connected there. And then Keith Law had an interesting report that if Lawler does not go, I think Arizona has the 6th pick. If he doesn't go too early, he's a guy who could just go to college, try to come back and be 1-1 in 2 years. He's actually older for a high school prospect. He's either already 19 or going to be 19 soon. So he could re-enter the draft in 2 years instead of 3, and could try to get that bigger payday then if he wanted. Why you would go to college and not take like $3 or $4 million and go play professional baseball is beyond me, but that is in the realm. So I'm going to say Meyer to Detroit. I'm going to say Kumar to Boston. And then I'm going to say Khalil. Is it Watson to Baltimore?
Situation like that would only happen, I feel like, where he would go to college if he slid down to like mid to late first round. I feel like
that's possible.
If you're a top 10 guy, what in the world are you doing?
Yeah, no question about it. Hey, if you're just joining us on this special live edition of Bucking Crazy, first of all, we want to thank you. And secondly, we want to mention, of course, the Pirates made Henry Davis the first overall selection in this 2021 MLB first-year players draft. He's a catcher out of Louisville. And I want to mention, gentlemen, that Fangraphs recently produced their list of the top farm systems in all of baseball. And on that list, the Pirates came in at number 3 overall, just behind the Rays. And tell me who's number 2. Help me out again.
I'm not sure, but Jackson Jobe, you were right, David. He just
Jackson Jobe 3rd. Interesting. Yeah. To Detroit. Let me finish my point here quickly, though. This was prior to the Henry Davis pick, and it's also going to be prior to an Adam Frazier trade, most likely, a Richard Rodriguez trade, most likely, and some others. Tyler Anderson, we'd expect a few more probably gone by the deadline. Does that mean that the Pittsburgh Pirates could very well, at least from a Fangraphs perspective, have the number 1 farm system in all of baseball by, say, August 1st?
without a doubt. Without a doubt, I think the prospects that are going to be coming in, along with the guys we have, are going to put us back near the top for sure.
I agree. They'll be in the running. What I think what the Fangraphs and Keith Law and all the people who do those kind of projections are going to need. The Pirates do need, all our prospects are essentially AA lower. We don't have anything in the higher level. They're going to want to see, I think, a few guys play well in those higher levels, more guys in AA and AAA opposed to lower A and single A. So it might not happen by August 1st, but I could think this time next year for sure we could be looking at the top farm system at baseball. You have to look at, Tampa currently has it. They have a guy like Wander Franco who, stepped into the major leagues, and, a guy could, already, play for 25 teams in the league,
Sure.
So there are a lot of guys in the higher levels, but the Pirates, Sherrington has done a great job in just getting numbers, getting guys. And it seems like all the guys we've gotten with all the 3 big trades we made over the offseason, they've done pretty well in the minor leagues. You're seeing guys who are performing well. Rosny Contreras, I know he's a little bit of an injury scare, but he's been phenomenal in AA. And he's actually about the same age as Kumar Rocker and Jack Leiter. I tweeted that out the other day, and he's already dominating AA. So he's theoretically ahead of the schedule for guys like that. They would probably start in a high A or maybe even a AA in what he's doing. So there's a lot of potential here. There's a lot of guys to be excited about right now in the Pirate system. Hopefully they get to Pittsburgh sooner rather than later.
We are already at pick number 4 in the 2021 MLB draft. The Pirates, of course, took Henry Davis. The Rangers followed that with Jack Leiter. And then Jackson Jobe just went to the Detroit Tigers, a prep arm. Guys, I'm curious to get your thoughts. Elliot, I'll start with you. Both shortstops obviously still on the board in Meyer, Lawler, and Watson as well, I should say. So all these shortstops, these prep shortstops, still kind of lingering. What for you, if you're a GM, scares you the most about taking a high school prospect? Obviously, there is a longer duration of time there where things can go wrong. And we've seen things go wrong, but there's also a great deal of upside with them as well, right?
Right. Yeah, I think you hit the nail right on the head there, that these guys have only played high school ball. I'm sure that high school ball is better, down in Texas or places like that than it was for me growing up in northeastern Pennsylvania, for sure. But these guys, they do have a lot of upside, but there is a lot of risk involved there. And even though we are kind of starting to enter in a golden era of shortstops again with guys like Tatis and a lot of very talented players at the position, they definitely are risky. And I mean, we're talking about them sliding right now, but I think all 3 of those guys are still going to be top 10 picks. So I think that it definitely is riskier to pick a high school player, but we've seen, spades of high school players come right into the minor leagues and be extremely successful.
I also think you have to look at the maturity for these guys too. You forget they're 18 years old. I'm 39 and I'm a disaster. My wife, she's not. My wife just gave me a thumbs up from the kitchen. She's like, "Yes, you are a 39-year-old disaster. You're giving an 18-year-old $6 million, making him a professional." That's a lot for a kid, when you're essentially usually going to be a freshman doing beer bongs and playing PlayStation in a college dorm room somewhere. You got to make sure you draft a kid who can handle it. We've seen guys over the years who couldn't handle it. You look at, Josh Hamilton was the perfect example. It's a lot for these kids. So I think if you're going to make an investment of all this money of the draft position, that's a big one. Who knows when you're going to have a pick like this again? You want to make sure it's right, and you want to make sure that the person can also handle it, and they're not going to go crazy with the pressure. They're not going to break down. They're going to be able to handle this, along with being able to physically handle the job of being, a professional baseball player, a potential major league, player.
Oh, we're about to find out.
Boston.
Who was it?
Marcelo Meyer to Boston.
Interesting. So they go the high school route. They bypass Kumar Rocker here, and they do take a guy that we thought for a long time would be the name called by the Pittsburgh Pirates tonight, Marcelo Meyer, number 4 overall to the Boston Red Sox. So to recap really quickly for you guys, it was Henry Davis, number 1 of the Pirates. Jack Leiter goes 2nd overall, the Vanderbilt ace, to the Texas Rangers. Jackson Jobe, a high school arm, 3 to the Detroit Tigers. And now Marcelo Meyer, who has drawn comparisons to the likes of Corey Seager, a tall shortstop, a switch hitter. But you never know with these guys. They could also be the next Cole Tucker. Goes 4th overall to the Boston Red Sox. Gentlemen, we're going to go through pick number 5 here, and then let's preview these next couple of days a little bit. On the clock currently are the Baltimore Orioles with pick 5. I was going to say, heck, at this point, let's start rooting for Meyer and Watson and House and these guys to keep getting pushed down, maybe into the second round. No, I'm only kidding, of course. Although we've seen things like that happen back before this new pay structure, I should say, new slot structure, when Pirates, of course, took Josh Bell in the second round, who was a guy that many talked about going in the top 10. Did you guys watch the Buccos game today?
I caught the home runs from Castro. I didn't watch.
I was just going to ask. So I wanted to ask about Rodolfo Castro because obviously it's quite relevant. This is a guy who tore up the minors before being called up. He wasn't a household name. He wasn't on the Pirates' top prospects list prior to the season. But this international signee looks like a guy who could potentially make some noise and stay. What do you like about his game, guys?
That's a good question, because I'll admit I don't know a whole lot about him. What I like, though, is you need to give these guys an opportunity. If and when Adam Frazier's traded, put him at second base for the end of the season.
You don't want to see D. Gordon?
No, I have no interest in D. Gordon. D. Gordon he's really good to use on like the strange Gordon. He's good on like MLB The Show, because then you could just steal bases like him with crazy and nobody can throw you out. But from a baseball perspective, there's no value in running someone like him out there. So when Frazier's traded, I would say, play these kids. But what I wanted to ask you guys, give me your prediction. Let's say 2025. What does the Pirates lineup look like?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because I did this exercise recently. I was fortunate enough to join another friend's podcast. I'll shout him out. Eddie Hobaugh was his name. And we basically went through the lineup from top to bottom. And at the time, I had the Pirates not selecting Henry Davis. This was about a month and a half ago when Jack Leiter was fully in vogue. So I had Jack Leiter as their pick in this draft. Obviously, that's not the case now. So Andy Rodriguez was my catcher. He is now replaced, of course, by Henry Davis. And I'll go through the rest quickly so Elliot can have a chance. He was my catcher. Mason Martin was at first base. David's man crush, of course, naturally, Nick Gonzalez has to be at second base there. I did have Leover Peguero at shortstop. Of course, Brian Hayes at third base. Left field to right field was Brian Reynolds, Hudson Head in center field. And in right field, you're going to need to spend some money to compete. So I was hoping Ben Cherington would pony up a few bucks, sign a free agent. If not, you might be looking at a Travis Swaggerty in right field, somebody of that nature. But maybe that could be, who knows, a guy who's already ascending into, a good baseball player out there right now who might eventually be on the Pittsburgh Pirates team. And then I had a DH, which is the kicker, as to why I didn't have this guy at right field, O'Neal Cruz. I
was wondering where he was.
I think in 23-24 that we do see the DH full time in the National League, gentlemen. And I think by that time we might also learn that O'Neal Cruz just is positionless a bit, unfortunately. I don't know if I trust him at shortstop, and if he gives me any type of Gregory Polanco vibes in right field, I'm sticking him right at DH.
Pull the plug immediately.
Hit 40 home runs for me. And so I don't know what discrepancies you would have with that, Elliot. Maybe a few.
The only real big discrepancy I have, of course, subbing in Henry Davis at catcher now that he's the pick, is I'm not against trading Brian Reynolds one of the next couple of years. I mean, he's got a lot of value. There's a very good chance that he, could be the veteran star, kind of like McCutchen was. We saw McCutchen play on a lot of really, really bad Pirates teams, then be the guy in 2013. Reynolds can definitely fill that role, but I'm not against moving him just because we have so many prospects here. We can see what they can do. Even if you don't trade him this summer, maybe move him next summer. You get a lot of these outfield prospects up that we have. The guys like Swaggerty, like you mentioned, give him a shot. And if we feel like we can live without Reynolds, I'm not going to miss him that much.
Other part of this is the rotation, David. Let me know your thoughts on the lineup, but I also want to know your thoughts on the projected future rotation.
Sure. Well, I think lineup, I agree with Elliot. I think Reynolds, he's been fantastic. And as I wrote a few weeks ago, I feel like the Pirates need to pick a direction with him. They either need to trade him now, this summer, or they need to sign him to a long-term deal where they buy out 2 or 3 years of his free agency and just get him locked down and say, you're our guy, we believe in you, and go from there, one way or the other. I don't like the idea of going year-to-year arbitration, messing around. I see no long-term real value in that. It'd be interesting to see what he would bring back. I think right now, his value is never going to be higher. And, that does, there also is, I think the public relations component of that as well, of, trading a 26-year-old switch hitting all-star center fielder who's playing the best baseball of his life. Obviously never looks good, even if the return is tremendous. It's that same Pirate of narrative of they're always kicking the can down the road. But I would like to see them sign him. And I think otherwise, for what the talent we have in our system would be great. I could see O'Neill playing great in right field. I hope he doesn't get Polanco vibes, but the dude has a cannon for an arm. Yeah. And with those long 6'7" legs, I think he could track down a lot of fly balls out there. And maybe you could see somebody like Andy Rodriguez, a switch hitter, being maybe he catches 2 days a week. Davis catches his 3, and the other's DH. And when the other's not behind the plate, you could do something like that if they both totally pan out. To get to the rotation, God, the rotation is a tough one. It's you never know how these guys are going to do. Obviously, you start with Quinn Priester. You hope he is your ace. You look at Rosny. You look at I'm going to draw a blank here. I'll even put Mitch Keller in there. You can put a JT Brubaker in there. There are lots of options. Tanaj Thomas, Brendan Malone.
Whoever our competitive balance pick is later tonight or tomorrow.
There's going to be guys. You just want to have as many. You want to have as many arms as possible. Will Bednar, I would kill for Will Bednar. If I could trade back in the draft and have taken Will Bednar, I think I would have. If you were allowed to do that, if I could trade back to get like 18 and get Bednar and pick up a bunch of picks, I would have done something like that. I know you can't do that. The rotation's tough. You just have to have as many fireballing arms out there as possible and see who sticks. I'm also, are you guys worried of, it feels like a curse now with Keller and Glasnow. If somebody like Priester, are we all going to be holding our breath when he makes that first start in Pittsburgh?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Of course. Absolutely. And hey, don't forget our my buddy Miguel Yajure, who could project Alton slot nicely into a 3 or 4 spot there. I mean, that kid has some maturity at a very young age. So that Yankees.
And if he doesn't make the rotation, he could be the best wiffle ball pitcher of all time because that dude can spin it.
Yes, no question about it. But of course, the 2 pitchers coming back in the Jameson Taillon trade, Roansy Contreras and Miguel Yajure, looking better and better. Obviously, we wish Roansy the best in terms of a little bit of ligament damage, potentially forearm damage, which is very concerning, of course, anytime you're talking about a pitcher. But hey, like I said earlier, it might just be time to get it out of the freaking way. So he's ready to compete whenever this Pirates team is a contender next. All right, guys, let's wrap this up. Thank you so much to all that joined us live on Buckin' Crazy tonight. I do want to ask you guys your final kind of reaction to Henry Davis. What is the main takeaway? What do you think that the eggs on Twitter are currently saying right now? Who the hell is this guy, and why? How are they ever going to get me to buy a Pirates ticket around Henry Davis? So do you think maybe there's, they'll do a better job convincing this fan base that he's an ex-Buster Posey?
I feel like the eggs on Twitter probably have to be kind of happy. I think this is a good pick. They got the perfect mix of picking the best player available and picking somebody who's going to fit really well into our system. I think Henry Davis is ultimately going to be the right choice. If he ends up a bust, he ends up a bust. But he had just as much of a chance of ending up a bust as anyone else in this draft, I feel like. So I feel like the Pirates made the right pick tonight.
I think the uninformed are going to look at it and be like, why didn't we take Jack Leiter? I've heard Marcelo Meyer for a month now. Why didn't we take him? But there's also a strong narrative for taking Davis. You have a catcher who hit 400 in college baseball. It obviously fills an organizational need. It's a hard position to fill at the major league level. Dude has real power that is going to excite people. If he goes to Altoona and hits 25 bombs next summer, people are going to forget this real quick. There was not going to be one selection here that was going to make everybody happy. There are always going to be those who want to see the Pirates go in a different direction. But I think Davis overall, this is a solid pick. There is not really much you can poke holes at this. Everybody's going to have their different preferences, and that was the problem with this draft is, we go around, everybody's going to give a different name of who they prefer since there isn't that one guy. It looks like, though, that Cherington made a solid choice that has real potential to help this team win in a few years.
Guys, with the 5th overall pick, the Orioles selected
Colton
Cowser. You got it, from Sam Houston State. So once again, the Rocker free fall continues. The Lawler free fall continues just a bit. But Colton Cowser goes to the Baltimore Orioles, and the Angels are on the clock now currently with the next selection. All right, that's going to do it for Buckin' Crazy tonight. I hope you enjoyed spending some time with us on a Sunday evening. I also want to make you guys aware that we will have a follow-up episode soon, potentially this week. And we're going to be joined by a former Pirates broadcaster. We're very excited for that. Tim Neverett. He's the current play-by-play guy for the Los Angeles Dodgers. He also spent a lot of time in Boston, of course, which is where he is from. He has a book out on the Dodgers championship run last season. And of course, he spent a lot of time with the Pirates in 2010 through 2015 when they were going through a serious run of their own. So it'd be great to get his insight, pick his brain a little bit, and see what he thinks and if he's still connected to Pittsburgh. All right, David, Elliot, any final thoughts? We're on Will Bednar watch, aren't we?
We are on Will Bednar. If Will Bednar falls, I will be the happiest man in the world, though I don't think it's going to happen. I'm just going to be curious as to see who the experts, who's left after today and who's going to look like the best selection. It's always hard to tell with these guys, but I'm hoping there's going to be an obvious one or two where everybody's a little surprised that this person slipped and Ben Cherington can just jump right in tomorrow and pick them up.
I misspoke, by the way. I said Angels. The Diamondbacks are on the board with the 6 overall pick. Sorry, I just want to clarify that. Elliot, any final thoughts?
Yeah, we're definitely on Will Bednar watch. It would be great if he could come to Pittsburgh. He probably won't fall that far. And whoever is going to grab Kumar Rocker here in the back half of the top 10 or wherever he goes, get the champagne bottles popping because this guy is going to be good. And the free fall, whoever is going to end up with him, definitely a year ago could not have been expecting they would even have a chance.
I think my love of Nick Gonzalez is on par with Elliot's love of the Vandy pitchers. I think we're gonna have to keep Elliot away from those guys. I think
we're gonna keep
they won't be involved with the Pirates anymore unless we see a gigantic free fall from Kumar Rocker. So I've let him go tonight.
One thing's for certain is we'll be keeping a close eye on both of their careers, Jack Leiter and Kumar Rocker, obviously, because for a short time, it felt like they were Pirates, even though they never got to be in the black and gold colors. All right, guys, it's been a blast. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. Looking forward to some of your draft coverage, of course, here in the next couple of days on the site. Make sure everybody out there checks out yinzercrazy.com and subscribe to us on YouTube. It's Yinzer Crazy for more episodes of Buckin' Crazy, the best Pirates miniseries on the web. We've had the Fort McHenry Kip Walls, and we're going to be joined by Tim Neverett soon. But it gets no better, really, at the end of the day than David Stegan and Elliot Hicks. All right, guys, thank you so much. Let's go Bucks. Congrats to Henry Davis, your first overall pick for the Pittsburgh